Jailhouse ghosts? Supernatural hotel guests? These are some of the things you could allegedly stumble upon as you explore the storied city of Salem, Massachusetts. And while the city's witch trials do play a role in some of these tales, many explore sides of the witch city that are not as widely known. Oh yes, there is history here. Whether you're visiting the witch city for Halloween or during other parts of the year, you'll quickly realize something about Salem. It's a city that's played a consequential role in American history, and not just for its witch trials. In the first part of our tour, we explored several haunted locations across the witch city, ranging from a church that sat on top some dark secrets, quite literally, a haunted restaurant, and the ghosts of Salem's oldest cemetery. But these locations only offer a taster for some of the city's other haunted lore in store. This truth is especially reflected in our first stop, which has gained significance across centuries. This place, Lyceum Hall, has an interesting backstory. The hall, which opened in January 1831, currently houses a popular seafood restaurant called Turner's Seafood. But much like similar lyceums that opened all across the Northeast in the 1800s, it became known as a cultural center where ideas and opinions were exchanged. For example, it hosted a speech from abolitionist Frederick Douglass on President Abraham Lincoln's assassination. And perhaps most notably, it was the site of the first demonstration of the long-distance telephone call by Alexander Graham Bell in 1877. But if you decide to sample a seafood dish at Turner's, there's something you should know about the second floor. It's rumored that if you head upstairs, you could bump into the spirit of one of Salem's witch trial victims. That's because this building is on land that was formerly the orchard of Bridget Bishop, the first individual to have been executed for witchcraft in Salem. Bishop, who was in her early 50s at the time she was accused in April 1692, was considered an easy target for witchcraft allegations. She had been accused of the crime before and had an established history of petty theft. And according to historians, Bridget's outward behavior may have also unsettled her more pious neighbors. She was known to have been very flirtatious with other men around Salem, and was allegedly in an abusive relationship with her second husband, Thomas Oliver, often walking around town, scratched and bruised. In fact, after she stood trial in 1677 for calling her husband an old devil and an old rogue on the Sabbath, she and Oliver stood gagged at Salem's public market as punishment. Not long thereafter, Oliver died under unusual circumstances. During Bridget's examination for witchcraft, Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam Jr., and several other women started convulsing and writhing in her presence. And Judge John Hawthorne, who developed a reputation for his aggressive witchcraft convictions, even accused her of bewitching her former husband, drawing from town gossip. Bishop denied the charges throughout her examination and at her eventual trial. At one point, after Hawthorne surmised she was engaging in witchcraft through her own body movements, she responded, "I know not what a witch is." Still, numerous witnesses testified against Bishop, accusing her of things such as bewitching livestock, sending her spirit to torment neighbors, and making puppets. It did not help that examiners found a patch of skin on her body that they considered a witch's teat, even though today it would have likely been considered a mole or a skin tag. She was eventually escorted through town on June 10, 1692 by Sheriff George Corwin and hanged at Proctor's Ledge. But although the site of Bishop's hanging is a considerable distance from Lyceum Hall, it's said she likes to haunt the area where her original orchard stood. In an interview with NBC Boston 10 on November 1st, 2023, the restaurant's owner said most of the supernatural activity she and her staff have witnessed occurred on the restaurant's upper dining floor, specifically around a large mirror. The mirror reportedly shows Bridget's apparition whenever she appears, though many tour groups gaze up at the second floor windows to see if she's staring back. In addition, the bar area on that floor is sometimes rearranged overnight on its own. And the haunted activity occurs elsewhere. One customer even complained of getting kicked by a little boy on her way back from the restroom, even though there was no one actually there. Plus, if you're lucky, the restaurant's delicious seafood dishes may not be the only thing you smell. It's also said that when Bishop's spirit is present, you will notice a strong scent of fresh apples, just like those that grew on the site centuries before. Despite all of this activity, it seems Bishop's spirit is on good terms with the restaurant's owners. As the owner admitted to NBC, the Turner family sometimes leaves out a glass of champagne every night as a gift for this ghost to enjoy. Unsurprisingly, many sites associated with the witch trials are rumored to have spooky reputations. This fact applies to the Witch House, which is closer to Salem's downtown. This house is the last freestanding building to have had an association with the city's witch trials, which took place from 1692 to 1693 and led to the deaths of 20 people. While a plaque on the house states it was built around 1642, most historians today believe it was built in the 1660s or 1670s. This contrasts with theories from Victorian-era historians who believed the house was built decades earlier. They even speculated it was once the home of minister and Rhode Island founder Roger Williams, who was eventually chased out of town by his Puritan colleagues for his progressive beliefs. But contrary to what its name would suggest, no witches lived or were held for trial here. But a judge who played a prominent role in many of the convictions that occurred did. That judge, Jonathan Corwin, purchased this imposing house in 1675. While the merchant and magistrate had a role in questioning early witchcraft suspects Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba, he would eventually be tapped to replace resigning magistrate Nathaniel Staltensall on the court of Oyer and Terminer to hear arguments on the witch trials. Jonathan and his colleague on the court, his brother-in-law John Hawthorne, became controversial not just for their aggressive convictions and examinations, but for also admitting so-called spectral evidence against the accused. This meant the judges considered evidence arising from visions to be acceptable for determining whether witchcraft occurred. And reportedly, Corwin's former home contained spectral evidence of a different kind. When you step inside the witch house, make sure to listen closely. That's because the house, which was featured on the 4th season of Ghost Adventures, is rumored to be home to disembodied voices and cold spots. Some visitors have also claimed to have been touched by unseen forces inside the building. The source of these hauntings is unclear. Some haunted tour sites believe some of the artifacts on display in the Witch House's walkthrough museum, which include a poppet found in a first-period New England home, contain residual energy that could be to blame. But while you cannot confirm this at the house during the witching hours of the night, it's open daily during the day for anyone to explore, with limited hours from mid-November through March. But not all of Salem's haunted landmarks have ties to the witch trials. Some actually are rooted in the city's not as talked about, but just as important, maritime history. That's the case for our next stop, the Hawthorne Hotel, which is rumored to have some rather interesting hotel guests who may have never left. Located close to the Salem Common, the Hawthorne greeted its first guests in 1925. It's named after famed author and Salem native Nathaniel Hawthorne, whose statue is just down the street from the hotel's entrance. It boasts a prime location for exploring central Salem and the Witch City's waterfront district, and it has also hosted a number of high-profile guests, including Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, Walter Cronkite, and even Johnny Cash. The hotel has also been featured in The Real Housewives of New York in the movie Joy. It even hosted an iconic elevator scene from Bewitched, a popular 1960s sitcom. But when you check in to stay, make sure to double check your room number. That's because according to the Historic Hotels of America, several rooms of this hotel may come with some ghostly roommates. Room 325, for example, is rumored to be replete with cold spots, and at times can be filled with the smell of fresh cut flowers, even though there are no flowers in the room. Guests in this room and another, 621, have reported seeing the faucets turning on and off on their own, as well as the lights. And then there's the 6th floor. Visitors who have stayed there have reported seeing a female ghost floating about the hallway, though she always seems fixated on a particular room. If you're assigned room 612 at check-in, you may very well have her as your roommate. This, after all, is the room she mainly frequents, with many guests reporting that they feel like they're being watched. It's debatable who this woman is, but one thing is certain, she is certainly enjoying her stay. As for the reason why it's haunted, While many sites, and even the show Ghost Hunters, which filmed there, claim that the Hawthorne had actually sat on Bridget Bishop's orchards, this is untrue. As we have already addressed, historians believe the orchard was on the site where Turner's Seafood is today. The Historic Hotels of America seems to believe the hotel's haunted connections stem from Salem's old maritime elites, who routinely met at the building that was there before, the Franklin Building. It was the meeting spot of the Salem Marine Society, a prominent group of marine merchants who all lived around the area. Interestingly, the building experienced multiple fires, with one burning the original building to rubble. The Salem Marine Society still meets at the Hawthorne today, after agreeing to have their headquarters demolished in exchange for dedicated meeting space in the new hotel. And some haunted activity elsewhere in the building suggests the Society's original members may have continued their regular meetings in the afterlife. For example, it's said that one boat steering wheel that's on display in the hotel is rumored to turn on its own, possibly from a haunt looking to relive his glory days on the sea. And some sites blame the sailors themselves for some of the other supernatural hijinks at the hotel, which have included rearranging furniture in the banquet hall, among other things. Or maybe it was Harry Houdini. In 1990, the hotel actually hosted a seance in an attempt to communicate with the spirit of the famous magician. Regardless of the haunted rumors surrounding the Hawthorne, its central location and storied history make the hotel worth considering as a place to stay or dine at. And if you thought the Hawthorne had quite a guest list, our last stop does too, although it's full of unsavory characters. That spot, the old Salem Jail, is now home to luxury condos and a ground floor restaurant, thanks to an award-winning restoration. But after it opened to the public in 1813, it would go on to host some of the most notorious criminals in Massachusetts. According to Historic Salem Inc., which has been behind the restoration of several high-profile local landmarks, the building had been serving as the oldest active correctional facility in the country at the time it closed in 1991. During its nearly 2 centuries in operation, the jail was home to criminals such as the Boston Strangler, mafia figure Jerry Angiulo, hitman Joseph the Animal Barboza, and Robert Joseph J. Specs O'Keefe. It also hosted a number of soldiers who were imprisoned during the Civil War, and saw several riots that involved dumping urine-filled buckets and trash around the building. Notably, it was the site of approximately 50 executions, and even additional suicides. After it closed, it remained abandoned and a go-to spot for vandals and thrill-seekers for much of the 1990s, before its eventual transformation into a residential complex. And those who dared to walk into the building were allegedly treated to some supernatural surprises. In his book Ghosts of Salem, author Sam Baltrusis wrote that many who visited the site claimed seeing shadow people rushing toward the site's fences, possibly in hopes of plotting an escape. There are also spirits around who are more defined. These included the ghosts of Civil War soldiers in 1800s clothing, screaming in pain from their punishments. And that was not all. Visitors also claimed seeing the figure of a man with a candle walking around a floor that had collapsed many years before. All of this, coupled with frequent metal banging sounds, made for quite a scene. And even when the jail was operating, some of its prisoners reported having ghostly cellmates from decades or centuries past. But if you're considering living in one of those condos today, we have some good news. It's said the jail's alleged haunting subsided after the building's conversion, offering a possible symbolic jailbreak for those spirits kept inside. Still, its role in housing some of the Bay State's not-so-finest has helped it gain prominence in the Witch City's haunted lore. Coincidentally, 2 of the men executed at the old Salem Jail played a major role in what is perhaps Salem's most famous and infamous murder. It's one associated with what many say is the Witch City's most haunted house, and one that influenced a famous work from Edgar Allan Poe. We'll be visiting this moment in history and the house behind it in a future episode. In the meantime, the places we've covered already are all worth adding to your haunted Salem itinerary. It just goes to show you that in many cases, haunted history can be in plain sight. Thanks for watching There Is History Here. If you enjoyed diving into the past with us, make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Both are free to do and mean a lot for helping us grow our channel and reach more people. Your support helps us continue exploring the stories that shaped our world and the unique history that's right under our noses.